So it starts off with something innocent. Perhaps you ask something like,
"Oh, honey, did you remember to grab olives for my martini?"
when your partner looks away or doesn't answer,
No, I did not. Your martini olives must have slipped my mind.
you just know that it is because they are mad at you. Thought patterns like this can be a symptom of relationship anxiety, and it falls under the category of the mind-reading mandate. It's one of the 10 rules of relationship anxiety that you're following without even knowing it. Knowing what the rules of relationship anxiety are and then breaking them is the start of a happier, healthier, more satisfying relationship. My name's Oliver. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles, and I help people overcome their anxiety to live a more fulfilling and expansive life with great relationships. So let's imagine it's a quiet Saturday morning and you're in the passenger seat on the way to run some errands together. You make a small comment about needing more coffee or forgetting the coffee, and your partner doesn't respond right away. Perhaps they keep their gaze forward, perhaps their jaw sets in a certain way, but there is a palpable shift in your mood. That pause suddenly isn't a gap in conversation anymore, it's a sign, and you just know that they are irritated, they're tired of you, they're thinking about something more important that they can't or won't tell you because they don't like you anymore. So then you start replaying all of the scenes from the last few days, looking for proof that this distance has been building, or all the things that you could have done to annoy them, hurt them, make them mad at you. And all of a sudden, that idyllic domestic Saturday morning routine has become a scene from the Hunger Games, and literally anything could happen. This is exactly how the mind-reading mandate works. It's just one of the 10 ways that anxiety manipulates us. And this one convinces us that we are fully qualified to decode every micro expression, every pause, every shift in breathing, as if we're Jack Bauer or Sherlock Holmes. So what makes this belief that we can read minds accurately even worse is that anxiety convinces us to treat our assumptions like facts and our fears as if they are prophecies. And then suddenly we're building entire architectures of meaning from a single unreturned smile. There's a very famous psychologist called Daniel Kahneman who won a Nobel Peace Prize for his research in psychology. He says that we as human beings are very prone to overestimate how right we are. And he also says that declarations of high confidence mainly tells you that an individual has constructed a very coherent story, but not necessarily that that story is true. But here we are. Anxiety convinces us that we are fully capable of mapping out the entire emotional terrain of another person just from the way that they buttered their toast or looked at the phone. And let me get real, I know that this is not true because I've spent the last 10 years not only being a therapist, but looking for a book that helps me read people's minds, because that would make my job a whole bunch easier. It's not out there. We can't do it. But to be fair, anxiety is just doing its job, which is to keep you small, safe, and separate. And it's been doing it very well, at least from an evolutionary perspective. Anxiety is basically an ancient survival instinct designed to keep us safe from danger, small, to hide or not be noticed, and separate from people who might pose a risk to us. Today, though, that same wiring that helped us survive saber-toothed tigers and dinosaurs is still active, but without velociraptors and Viking armies, so it can only really scan the horizon for emotional threats that may or may not exist and aren't really quite as threatening. Before I go on, if you want more help identifying the 10 rules of relationship anxiety and more tips to grow a healthier, happier relationship, you can either take the 10 rules of relationship anxiety quiz, or you can sign up for my newsletter. I'll put the links everywhere. So I know what you're thinking. You've been together with your partner for a long time, and yes, you probably do know your partner pretty well. You probably can predict their responses, finish their sentences, and order for them at certain restaurants. I'm sure some of the time, perhaps even most of the time, what you assume could be true. I'm not arguing with that. But if you've got a touch of relationship anxiety, be very careful, because your anxiety is not your friend. And what it whispers in your ear about what your partner's thinking or feeling is not at all unbiased and often not real. Being right some of the time, or most of the time, is actually what makes this worse, because the occasional or consistent accuracy becomes a curse. It's like a gambler who only remembers their wins and forgets all of the money that they've lost. If you're prone to anxiety, and relationship anxiety in particular, we have to remember that anxiety is not interested in showing us the truth. It actually strips away everything that is truthful just to keep us focused on our fears. So the mind reading mandate doesn't just affect us. Our partners begin to sense that they're being watched or misinterpreted. So they will start to edit themselves, becoming more careful or more cautious, and probably changing their behaviors slightly in ways that actually give anxiety even more fuel. The relationship tends to develop what we call in family systems work emotional fusion, where both people lose their sense of self in the anxiety of trying to manage and moderate each other's feelings and anxiety. And it happens in 3 layers. First, we exhaust ourselves maintaining constant surveillance, scanning for threats that may or may not exist. We collect all the evidence in a case that no one asked us to build. Secondly, our partners feel the weight of being perpetually misunderstood. We are constantly casting them in the position of being the villain and they have to defend themselves. I say this all the time in couples therapy. The true gift that you can give your partner is the gift of being understood. And this rule of anxiety is actively working against you from trying to understand your partner by making you believe in your own assumptions without checking them out. The third layer of this is that communication starts to disappear. Why would you even ask what someone is thinking when you've already decided? Why would you want to explain yourself to someone who's already written your story? It's like watching a movie with someone who is adamant that they know how the movie's going to end and they haven't watched it, and you think something different, and then you start arguing about it, but really, neither of you are watching the show anymore. So what do we do about this? Well, I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel impossible, so I'm going to steal from the legendary Brené Brown and give you a tool called The Story I'm Making Up. It's so easy. You just say, hey, I'm making up this story that you're mad at me. It's not an accusation anymore when you start by saying, I'm making up this thing. It's a conversation, it's an invitation, it's collaboration, which is very different from anxiety's MO that traps us in oppositional or confrontational stances. So imagine how different your relationship would be when you enter conversations with a beginner's mind rather than the assumption that you're the expert. Curiosity killed the cat. But I think in couples therapy, curiosity doesn't kill anything, especially when it's all to do with a conversation. You might practice what we call generous unknowing, holding space for possibilities that are not catastrophic, holding space for possibilities that you are wrong. Because that pause or that silence from your partner might be exhaustion, not anger. It might be a distraction. It might be stress, not relationship doubt. And of course, the silence could just be silence. So the mind-reading mandate promises safety through knowledge, but delivers only loneliness of living in our own projections and made-up fantasies. Real intimacy and healthy relationships asks us to do something braver and the opposite, to stand in the space between knowing and not knowing. You're connected with your partner, but not fused, and you remain close, but not mushed up and collapsed into each other. So I'm going to encourage you to be curious and then do something even more radical, actually listen to what they say. If you want more help with this, I've got tons of tools and ideas and suggestions and tips that I share with couples in my private practice that I am sharing with you. So sign up for that newsletter, take the quiz, do all of the things. It's all yours.